listener production.
Have you heard of Snus before? It's a small tobacco sachet that you stick between your gum and your upper lip, and it's been popular in Sweden for a long time. But now there's a new form of snussing with products that take out the tobacco and replace it with flavours like cool mint, espresso or bellini, but they leave in the nicotine. Discreet ways to consume nicotine with fun, attractive flavours sound familiar? Well, the similarities to vaping don't stop there. Just like with vapes, we're also seeing nicotine pouches being advertised to young people online right now. So how popular is the use of nicotine pouches in Australia? Is it on track to becoming a problem with teens just like we've seen with vaping? And should we consider regulating it? Dr. Becky Freeman is an Associate Professor at the School of Public Health at Sydney University. She's had over 20 years' experience in tobacco control and has a special interest in the ways social media can influence public health. Dr. Freeman, thanks for your time. First things first, how new are these nicotine pouches and how are they being marketed towards kids?
Well, pouches are relatively new here in Australia. They've been around for a few years in the US. We've seen them sort of creeping up in popularity there. But we really first noticed them through our Generation Vape study early in 2024, when young people who are participating in our study started mentioning them, that they were seeing them and that they were using them.
Okay. Are they legal in Australia?
No, they are not. We have very clear laws about how nicotine is regulated in this country. So nicotine is considered a poison. And that means you can't just go around putting nicotine into any old product you like and selling it on the shelf. So, you couldn't get like nicotine soda or nicotine lollies, for example. But you can sell, obviously, nicotine replacement therapies that have been approved by the TGA as safe and effective for smoking cessation. That's why sort of, your patches and your gums are available. And of course, we have a big exception for smoking, for cigarettes and tobacco products. You can purchase those as well legally. But anything else, including nicotine-containing vapes, that's something people don't realize, is that you actually need a prescription to legally obtain a nicotine-containing vape, and you should only be getting that from a pharmacy. And so pouches, because they have nicotine in them and have not been approved for smoking cessation, cannot be legally sold in Australia.
Okay, so they're still relatively new here. What's the response been initially from lawmakers, from government? I know that the issue's been raised with some levels of government. What's their response been?
Yeah, look, I think, as is happened with vaping, it's caught governments on the back foot again. It's, catching up to industry going, gee, well, these products, they're not legal here. I guess we better start monitoring and enforcing for them. And I know authorities, for example, in New South Wales Health, when they've been doing their enforcement checks on vaping products, have also found these pouches and have seized those products as well. They've slipped through the border, obviously. They weren't on the radar of Border Force as being a product that should be being investigated. I'm hoping now that some of us have drawn attention to that issue. They will be. But of course, this is a powerful industry with global marketing practices. And there's a lot of money to be made in addicting people to nicotine.
So who is making them then, and where in Australia are they being sold? Is it the same as vapes, that they're just at the corner store tobacconist?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have mostly what I would say anecdotes or stories. We don't have really good data because this is a new product on the market. We haven't been monitoring it in any of our national prevalence studies. We don't have great data. But what we can sort of see, from stories we're hearing, from the little bits of feedback we've had, is that these products are pretty much readily available in tobacconists, convenience stores, those kinds of places, and that they're being promoted online through websites. I got an ad actually popped up when I was just scrolling through YouTube. I got a paid promotion that I could hop online and order a pouch. That's how I got one. Yeah, so we're seeing these products again being sold online in particular. We're seeing them in convenience stores. We don't have a good handle on just how much product is coming to the country or just how many people are using them. I think we're sort of at the beginning phases here of just seeing a product that's sort of coming on, that, we've had cigarettes, we've had vapes, and now we're going to have nicotine pouches joining that suite of products.
So I'm actually a vapor, and I was at my local tobacconist towards the end of last year, right before all the bans were coming in. And I was purchasing one, and the guy behind, I didn't know him. I wasn't a regular at this place, so we didn't have any sort of existing rapport. And I said to him, he asked me, what are you going to do next year when all the bans come in? And I said, I'll probably quit because I don't want to go back to cigarettes. And, if I can't get them, I can't get them. It's as simple as that. And he pulled out from under the counter this little tin, and he slid it across to me like we were doing a covert drug deal. And he opened it and he said, have you tried these? And my question is he gave me one. I didn't try it. I threw it in the bin because I had no context. I had never heard of it. I had never seen them before. And, I'm a grown-up. I'm an adult.
Not to just pop one in your mouth. Yeah.
So. I have the ability as a grown-up to make those kind of critical decisions about my own health and safety in that moment with a completely unknown product. However, young people whose brains are still developing and who maybe don't have as much of a thought process for taking risks, they're more likely to take those risks. It might be just too tempting for them. My question is, are we on track to seeing these pouches kind of overtake vaping as vapes become harder to buy? And in my experience, they have been harder to buy. It's the law. I abide by the law. But yeah, so as they're becoming harder to buy, vapes are, we know that there are tobacconists going, hey, try this. Is that going to be the norm, and is this going to be the new vaping?
Look, I would love to be able to definitively answer that, but I'm speculating here. But what we can see sort of playing out in other markets where these products aren't illegal, the recipe seems to be there for the same thing to happen again with pouches, right? But I also want to clarify this assumption that somehow people were going to switch to pouches, or that there's some sort of like switching from cigarettes to vaping to pouches. And what we're seeing increasingly happen is what we call polyproduct use. So young people smoking, vaping, and using pouches. I don't want to say pouching. That sounds quite grim. Using pouches. So maybe you smoke on the weekends when you're out at the bar. You use vapes during the week at work when you can easily pop out for one. And then you just have a pouch in there at all other times. And so you're constantly using nicotine. That's one of my big concerns here, is that not only will we have a new level of users, but we'll be trapping people in smoking, trapping people in vaping, and then introducing another cohort of young people addicted to nicotine who never would have smoked or vaped as well.
Yeah, wow. The idea of constant consumption, I suppose, of nicotine sounds so extreme. And look, we know what some of the associated dangers are. Obviously with smoking, that's very well documented. Vaping, I think the long-term data is out, but there is, some preliminary stats that we understand. We understand what the dangers can be of nicotine. Are there any additional dangers from snus or from Zyn or whatever you want to call it that we haven't yet seen before?
Look, again, the sort of long-term data isn't there. Same sort of issue, because they are relatively new products. They don't have the similar sort of smoke associated with combusted products. I know because the pouches contain nicotine, flavors, and sweeteners, often sugars, there obviously are oral health concerns there as well. I know a lot of dentists are particularly worried about the oral health impacts, both of vaping and of these pouches. We know that some of the pouches still do contain traces of what we would call tobacco-specific nitrosamines. This is a fancy word for cancer-causing chemicals, essentially. So that would be a concern if you use these long-term, that you're exposing yourselves to these things. Nicotine, though, is really, really addictive, highly addictive. And particularly for, young developing brains, we don't want them exposed to nicotine. It can completely change how your brain develops, and it can require you to have nicotine to feel normal, to be able to concentrate in class, to be able to sort of get through a day. And we don't want, another generation of young people who feel they need these products in order to just exist, really.
Before I let you go, Dr. Freeman, I suppose the question that I have, and I'm probably biased because I am a vapor, as I've said, it's not just me kind of having these thoughts, is the idea of regulation is, why are we allow cigarettes, which we know the horrific impacts.
Cigarettes.
Yeah, okay. So in that case, why are we not regulating things like vapes, taxing them, making it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to purchase without identification? And then now we're seeing, this rise of this new product where we're going to be playing catch up again. Why are we not just regulating?
Yeah. And so I just want to make it really clear that vaping, obviously, if people are still using vapes in this new regime where we're banning the importation of vapes unless they're attached to a pharmacy, you can get a prescription from your GP and you can go off to a pharmacy to get a vape. So they're not prohibited in the sense that you can't get your hands on them. They're just in a really highly regulated channel. And that regulated channel is how we treat other things that are medicines. Now, of course, you compare that to how we regulate tobacco products. And it's taken us cigarettes came on the market in, 40s. It really became mainstream where everybody was using them 40s, 50s, right? And that's when we learned they were incredibly, incredibly harmful for you. And if at that time we had taken a different path and regulated them almost as tightly as we're regulating vapes, essentially pulled them off the retail shelves and only made them available to a really specific group of people who simply couldn't quit using them, imagine all the lives we could have saved. But instead, we've taken a model where we've just really slowly and incrementally applied restrictions over a 50-year period. So taking vapes and trying to learn from that and say, we can do this a lot faster. We can do this a lot better. We can actually regulate the supply of the product. Because we don't regulate the supply of tobacco products really at all. We allow them to be sold in every shop, in every community, all across Australia, to pretty much anybody.
That is all for this episode of The Briefing. Thanks for listening. Before you go, though, we would love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. We're also on TikTok and YouTube. Search Listener Newsroom. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. See you next time.